I clean my table off, I thought I would make one more project. I have this piece of jean leg. I think I used this jean for some pockets in a previous, like a jacket or something, and I have this piece left over. And I also have still some of these plaids. These plaids I got, they were samples that I picked up at the thrift store. I thought I'm going to make something, and I'm just have an idea of making a little quick trip bag or crossbody bag. It's going to be just a small size. And I have my lining cut there. This piece was a little bit shorter than my main fabric piece, but I'll make it work. I'm just going to stitch that. And then I also cut out the corners. I'm going to box the corners. So I cut out about an inch square on the bottom of this. So it'll be approximately a 2-inch boxed corners on the bottom of it. I took some scraps and I just created that flower. And then I'm going to do a bird. And now this piece of the scrap of plaid already had a heat and bond light on the back on the underneath side of it. So I'm just going to use that, and I'm going to run it through my big shot. And I just have this bird. Now I'm going to link some of my supplies down below. If I still can find this dye, I will link it. I'm not sure if it's still available or not, but Sizzix does have different bird dyes, and I just use my dyes all the time. So I just, pick up when I can with those. I want to do some sort of a branch to sit this bird on, so I'm just using little pieces of that plaid for the branch. I ironed on that bird, and now I thought a patch pocket would be fun on this, and so I did create this little patch pocket out of another scrap of this plaid, and I'm just going to pin that in place and take it over to my sewing machine. Now this whole piece is in the round, and so I am putting this on underneath my presser foot with the open arm. So it's around my open arm, and I have my free motion foot on, which works wonderful for this type of thing because I can go completely sideways. So it's easy to stitch something that is joined like this, like a pants leg. And I am just going around the edges with this. The thread I'm using is an all-purpose thread, and it's orange color. It has different oranges in it. It's like a multicolored thread, but just thought that would work well. It doesn't show up real well here, but it is kind of an orange color. And I'm doodling with this. Now notice how some of those branches have a pinking on it. I didn't do that. Some of the samples had the pinked edges on them, and so I just used that as for my advantage and just used that in my design. It kind of turned out fun. This is a raw edge applique, so I'm going over it several times, but yes, it is going to fray some. That's just what raw edge applique does. I don't mind the look. I really like the texture. I'm going to be doing the same with this little flower. Just going to be going around the different pieces of the flower, and you'll see that in a little bit. And I'm going to be doodling that as well, like I'm adding some detail to this leaf, just by kind of going in the center, and then too I'm doodling around the flower, just doing a little scalped edge around it. Now onto the pocket. I am going to be just using my free motion foot again and doing somewhat of a straight line. It is a little bit harder to do a complete straight line when you're doing free motion stitching, because I am doing the guiding, or I'm not using my feed dogs at all. But this is the easiest way to do something like this when it's completely sewn shut or sewn in around. Now, once I went all the way around that pocket, I'm going around it again, but going back and forth like this. You can see me going, and this is just going to add to the fact that it's not a completely straight line. Just kind of camouflaging that fact and kind of making it look like it's supposed to be that way. Next, I'm going to box the corners. I'm just going to sew across the corners and also the bottom of the bag and also the lining. Once that's sewn, I'm just slipping that lining into the bag. Now my wrong sides are together and just lining up the top edges. I thought that the whole bag was a little bit short, and so I'm going to add a facing to the top. Now is this like a lightweight interfacing on this? And it's a patchy look. And this was already sewn together. I had it on my table from a previous project. And so I'm just going to use this little facing piece to add some additional height to this bag. I've got that sewn on, and now I'm going to finish that seam just by turning that little bit under, taking it back to my sewing machine, and I'll stitch this. Giving it a little bit of a press now, and then I'm going to press under approximately a 1/2 inch on the top of this facing. I'm just going to turn that under and give that a press. And then that will be turned one more time, and I will cover that raw edge complete, or that seam completely on the top. Before I stitch that into place, I do want to add a magnetic snap to the top of this. And I just felt that facing wasn't quite strong enough for a snap, and so I'm going to add an extra little piece. This has that interfacing on as well. It was just a little bit of that was left over. So I'm just going to stick that underneath this facing where that snap is going to go. And I'm just going to glue this into place, that little piece of fabric. And I'm going to do that both on the front and the back of this facing. I just kind of eyeballed where the center of this was. You're not going to see this at all. I'm kind of covering it up on the inside of the facing. The facing will be turned down. But now I'm going to add my snaps, my magnetic snaps. Just marking where I need. Couldn't find my seam ripper on my messy table, so I'm using this big scissor to poke my holes. And then just going to be punching that. I'm using a little hammer to do this, to get those prongs bent over. A jewelry pliers works wonderful for that too. Now it's time to stitch. I'm going to stitch all the way around, just stitch in the ditch, that little thing. And then I added that little X, those little embroidery, you'll see a better picture at the end. Little decorative stitch. There you see it. Little decorative stitch. I just thought that added something. And it's in that same color orange thread I used. Now for the strap. I again have this piece laying here, and it's a little bit narrow or a little bit shorter. I wanted my strap to be a little bit longer, and so I'm going to cut this in half lengthwise. This is going to be a quite narrow strap, but this bag is small enough that I think it'll be fine. I'm just going to miter this, join it by a mitered seam here. And then I'm going to take it to my sewing machine, and I'm going to just create a fabric tube. So right sides are going to be together, and it's going to be a long tube. And then I turn that tube so the right sides are, I just turned this fabric tube and then stitched it on both at long edges. This is not going to be an adjustable strap, but I'm just going to just sew these in. I'm just adding some pins there. And the bag is complete. It was a real quick little fun project. I'll probably sell this at the flea market this summer. I think people would really enjoy it. You can see some pictures here. I hope you have a chance to create, everybody, and Happy New Year to everyone. Thanks for joining me today. Bye for now.